We finally seen the very first encounter cards as they revealed Phantom Blaster Dragon and Dragonic Overlord.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to another Cardfight update, and today we have another episode all around the Tuesday livestream. And as I already teased in the previous Cardfight update, today is going to be the reveal of the new encounter cards for the right line of Phantom Blaster Dragon and Dragonic Overlord. But surprisingly, Bushiroad didn't stop here, as there's even more of those particular cards. Because today they revealed these images. We see the encounter card for the Shadow Paladin Cater Sanctuary build, but also the one for the Dragon Empire Kagero build. And as we can see, we see the entire right line, but we also see two extra units. We see Maka and Charon for Shadow Paladin, but we also see Dragon Monk Gojo and Berserk Dragon for Kagero. And these 12 encounter cards are also all the encounter cards for this year. And today they revealed the entire right line for both Dragonic Overlord as well as Phantom Blaster Dragon. So let's take a look at what these new right lines are going to do for these old legends, as they are pretty interesting and very thematic. And let's start off with the right line for Cater Sanctuary, aka Shadow Paladin. And of course, both of the starters are just generic D-Arrow starters, so they have the skill that if you win second, you can draw a card. We can basically move on from this point onwards. So if we move up to the grade 1 of the right line, we see Blaster Javelin. And for Blaster Javelin, we see the two following effects. First off, it has auto. When this unit is rode upon by Blaster Dark, reveal the top card of your deck, call to the rearguard circle as the rest if it's a unit card, and discard it if it isn't. So this skill is very similar to the grade 1 of the Bastion right line, as it basically does the same thing, call the top card of the deck to the field, but if you cannot call it, aka it's an order card, you need to discard it. Now the difference is that for that one you need to be able to reveal 2 grade 3s in your hand. If you play Bastion, probably won't be an issue, but in this case you only need to write Blaster Dark, thus making it more generically accessible for other variants of Cater Sanctuary. Keep in mind, we could play these cards in other right lines and other strategy. With the Bastion grade 1, not so much if you don't rely on a lot of grade 3s. So that's an interesting thing to keep in mind. Of course, the biggest difference is that the grade 1 calls it in standing position and this calls it in rest. But it will come up in a moment when we're gonna talk about Blaster Dark. Now, as for the second ability, we've seen this on many other grade 1s of right lines, as it has continuous rearguard circle. During your turn, if you have a Vanguard with Blaster in its card name, this unit gets power plus 2k. It's a 10k booster or attacker. Nothing really special. It's restricted to the Blaster archetype, but besides that, you have other options. So I think you're only going to play this in the right line unless we get other cards that specifically wants us to have an X amount of Blaster cards on the field. But so far, that's not really the case. But if we take a look at Blaster Dark, we suddenly can see what's so important about the free call that we get of Blaster Javelin. Because here we have Blaster Dark, and Blaster Dark has the following abilities. Auto, when this unit is placed on a Vanguard circle or rearguard circle, cost counterblast 1 and retire another rearguard. Choose one of your opponent's rearguards, retire it, and this unit gets drive plus 1 until the end of turn. So for one counterblast, you can trade one unit with your opponent and you get potentially an extra drive. This is so important with Blaster Javelin because Javelin gives you that free retire. You just call thing on top of your deck, you don't care what it is. If it's a trigger, yeah, you retire it and get the extra drive and potentially snipe something off your opponent if they called something in the early game. This is great to just punish early aggression, or it can also be an incentive against your opponent to not rush you in the early game because you're gonna get free value off of it. And the twin drive is really nice because it's a twin drive on turn 2. We've seen this in the V era with the older Blaster Dark, how powerful it is, and we have it here again. Now, interesting enough, this skill is actually in combination of both the skills of the V era Blaster Dark. But then also on top of it, it has another skill, which is continuous rearguard circle. During your turn, if your rearguard was retired this turn, this unit gets power plus 5k. So it can become a 15k beater on the rearguard circle, which is pretty nice. If you have another one in your hand on turn 2, you can immediately make it a 15k attacker. And on your turn freeze with Phantom Blaster Dragon, you probably know where this is going. You can have some really strong attackers. Now there's one thing I need to clarify, as there's a lot of misconceptions that I see in the community on Twitter and Facebook. No, Blaster Dark does not drive check if it gets the extra drive while it's on the rearguard circle. It's still a rearguard. every unit in Vanguard, by default, has a drive check. Every grade 1 and grade 2s have drive checks, only grade 3s have twin drive because of their twin drive skill, but only your Vanguard is able to act upon that drive check. So even if you have rearguards with drive checks, it doesn't really matter. Now the interesting thing, however, is that Blaster Dark, if you use this skill as a rearguard unit, it does still get the extra drive check. So it will inherently have twin drive. So if there is a situation where you can turn a Blaster Dark into a Vanguard like we see with Ganslot and Blaster Blade, that Blaster Dark will have twin drive at that point. Or you have another card that randomly allows your rearguards to drive check. So there are some scenarios where this will come up, but in the general theme, it doesn't really matter that he gets an extra drive check on the rearguard circle. It's still a rearguard that cannot drive check when it's attacked. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's talk about the big boss of the new Cater Sanctuary Shadow Paladin ride line, and that's of course Phantom Blaster Dragon. And Phantom Blaster Dragon has two abilities, and one of those abilities is auto. When this unit is placed in the Vanguard circle, choose a card with Blaster in its card name from your soul, and you may call it to the rearguard circle. So that Blaster Dark that you just ridden, now you can call it out to the field and have a free unit. And because you placed on the circle, you can now use it on place effect to snipe something of your opponent's side of the field, which is great, and it then can turn into a 15k attacker. But then on top of it, Phantom Blaster Dragon also has another effect, which is act on Vanguard circle. Once a turn, cost counter +1, retire 3 rearguards, choose up to 2 of your opponent's rearguards, retire them, and this unit gets power plus 10k and critical +1 until the end of turn. So you sacrifice 3 units, you snipe 2 of your opponents, but you get 10k and a critical, but you also need to pay an extra counterblast. That does sounds like not really good value, maybe a bit less on your side, but keep in mind, the moment that you ride him, you get 1 rearguard for free. So effectively, if you calculate that in, it's actually that you need to retire 2 cards that you need to waste from your hand in order to retire 2 of your opponents, and then for 1 counterblast, you give the 10k and a critical. That sounds a lot more fair. Now, you might think to yourself this isn't all that amazing, as it's not really something like a combo extender, or it allows your rearguards to do much or anything besides that, but it does make your Blaster Dark turn into 15k beaters, thus giving you a bit better columns. But keep in mind, this amount of retire skills, or the power of retire, we haven't really seen this in Overdress. Yes, Eugene can retire something, but it's more piece reliant, and you need to put in way more resources and more cards to do that. This is just a boss unit on the Vanguard circle that just suddenly can nuke your opponent's board, that together with Blaster Dark can do a lot. So I can see definitely some value behind Phantom Blaster Dragon, and we haven't even seen the other 2 support cards with Maka and Charon that can supposedly support this archetype. And Cater Sanctuary has a lot of resource options already built in the nation, and that is something that Phantom Blaster Dragon can abuse. So I think there's a lot of potential within this, but we have to see what the other cards can do. Now, another interesting thing about this card is that its auto, when placed on Vanguard Circle ability, will activate every single time you Persona Ride. So the moment that you Persona Ride, you not only give 10k power to your front row, but you also get another unit onto the board which can fuel its act ability. And the second time that you ride him, you get a 13k beater of himself on the board, which is great. You always create more attackers on the field, so even if you do not activate its retire skill, you will always be able to attack twice if you can ride as you call out another unit on the field, which is a nice asset to have. And in the premium side of things, this is pretty interesting because you can combine this with the Superior Ride engine as you ride Blaster Dark, and then you Superior Ride into this, and that can then call out the Blaster Dark. Now, depending if you want to play the older Blaster Dark or you want to play this new Blaster Dark, that gives you more leeway to decide what type of direction you want to go. Now, of course, if you go with this new Phantom Blaster Dragon, that means you sacrifice the force marker of the V version, but it all comes down to what you rather want to do, and if you want to be a bit more aggressive in the early game, or you want to stack up on those force markers for later down the line. There is now more options available to us. But those are the cards that we got for Cater Sanctuary, aka Shadow Paladin. Let's take a look at the Dragonic Overlord ride chain. And once again, we know about the starter, it's just a generic starter. But if we take a look at the grade 1, which is Embodiment of Armor Bar, we see a very interesting skill because it has auto. When this unit is rode upon by Dragon Knight Nahalem, cost counter +1, search your deck for up to 1 grade 1 card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. It's a grade 1 searcher on your ride line, which you will have consistent access to. This is pretty powerful. This is basically Conroe in your right line. And currently, we don't have a lot of awesome grade 1 targets, but more importantly, Perfect Guards are grade 1. So it can just fetch you a Perfect Guard. But as we're going to get more and more support later down the line, and the scene is it's now an entire nation, we can just grab whatever grade 1 we want to get immediately into our hand for a potential combo play or maybe even a counter play against a certain deck. This now allows this particular variant of Dragon Empire be able to just run a couple of 1-offs or maybe 2-offs of grade 1s because you can just fetch them out with your right line on turn 2, which is kind of ridiculous. So this is a very powerful skill that will scale with the future. So this is going to be very interesting. But on top of it, we have another interesting skill, which is Auto Rearguard Circle. Once a turn, when your Vanguard attack hits, this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. So it can become a 13k attack or a booster the moment your Vanguard attack hits. And it doesn't specify if it needs to hit a Vanguard. So it can also just ram into a Rearguard to give this unit extra power. Now you might think to yourself, why would you want to do that? We get back to that in a moment. But first off, let's take a look at the grade 2, which is of course Dragon Knight Nahalem. And Nahalem has the following 2 abilities. First off, it has the auto ability, when this unit is rode upon by a unit with Overlord in its card name, call this card to the Rearguard Circle. This is really nice because it's generic and can work with the entire Overlord package, even in premium. So if you just write something, it immediately calls it out and you have another attacker ready. Somewhat similar to what we saw with Phantom Blaster Dragon, only that skill was on the grade 3. In this case, it's on the grade 2, which is also pretty sweet. But the reason why it wants to call himself out to the field is because of its other effect, because it's act on Rearguard Circle once a turn. If you have a Vanguard with Overlord in its card name, cost Soul Blast 1, and this unit and all of your Vanguards get power plus 5k until the end of turn. This is really good. Now, in Overdress standpoint, is basically a 5k to your Dragonic Overlord and 5k to himself for 1 Soul Blast. That's fine. Like, this could become interesting if we have another Nahalem, because then we can give another 10k to our Vanguard and we have potentially 20 3k columns to the side, or maybe even bigger if we have better boosters. But it just gives extra power to the board. But the reason why this is pretty good is because of its premium applications. Because in premium, one of the main strategies for Kagero is the Overlord Legion restand package. And with the cross and the legend being a thing, that means if you resolve this, it doesn't give your Vanguard plus 5k, but it gives it plus 10k. Because it specifically states all of your Vanguard get power plus 5k, and if you're a Legion, you have 2 Vanguards and both of them get the 5k power, and once they attack, they calculate both their power together for the attack. And because that Legion can swing 3 times, that extra 10k stacks up. So this is a nice interesting combo for the Legion, and it's also a nice right target, because if you write this and then you write the Legion Overlord on top of it, it calls itself out and then you can use its skill. So yeah, this is actually really good. So I like this Nahalem a lot. But of course, Nahalem isn't the main thing here. We have, of course, the main grade 3, which is Dragonic Overlord. And for Dragonic Overlord, we have 2 abilities. And the first ability is kind of surprising, as I didn't expect this effect, as it has continuous effect to Rearguard Circle. During the battle this unit attacked a rear guard, your opponent cannot call cards from their hand to the Guardian Circle. So this basically allows you to hit into your opponent's rearguard with a lot more effectiveness. And as we've seen with the grade 1 bar on the Rearguard Circle skill, once it hits, it powers up. So you want to have more consistent way to hitting your opponent's units. And another reason why you want to potentially secure the way that you can hit is because of its second effect, which is Auto on Vanguard Circle. Once a turn, when this unit attack hits, cost counter plus 1 and discard a card from your hand, stand this unit, and it gets drive -1 until the end of turn. This is completely identical to the Dragonic Overlord of the V series, and we basically came to expect that it would have a similar skill. Now, the only issue that I have with this particular skill is that even in V-Series it was kind of underwhelming and wasn't really that consistent. Now of course, its continuous effect does help that you can at least hit into the rearguard more consistently, thus securing the restand, and with bar also powering up, you get more value on the board. But I don't think that's really enough. I rather would have liked that this was counter plus 1 and just didn't lose in drive check without the discard, or if you need to discard that it doesn't lose a drive check, but sadly that's not really the case. Now of course, it's not done yet. We still have 2 cards left. We have Berserk Dragon and Dragon Among Gojo. They could change everything up for Dragonic Overlord, but luckily Nahalem and Bar as a right package are pretty powerful. Now I want to emphasize one more part about the first continuous effect of Dragonic Overlord. Yes, your opponent cannot call from hand. They aren't allowed to call Guardians when you attack into rear guard. That doesn't mean your opponent cannot block the attack. First off, they can intercept with their other column. That's a potential thing. But Blitz Orders are also a thing. And Blitz Orders can give your unit extra power, so that you can use those Blitz Orders to protect your rearguard that's being attacked by Dragonic Overlords, and thus still being potentially able to stop the attack, and then also negate the entire restand that's gonna happen from it. So there are some counterplay abilities against the Dragonic Overlord, and I'm very curious of what we're gonna see further down the line for Dragonic Overlord in general. Now, of course, keep in mind, they're now in a nation. So with any future Dragon Empire support, it can potentially upgrade this variant for Dragonic Overlord. And with Bar being able to search out any grade 1 in the right line, gives a lot of future potential for this particular strategy. So I'm very curious of what we're going to see, not only for Dragonic Overlord, but also for Phantom Blaster Dragon, because we have 2 more cards for the respective right lines left in the encounter card package. And once those are done, we've seen everything for the encounter cards for 2021. But with that said, we also now learned what we're gonna see next week. And next week, we're finally going to see what the brand new Verena is going to do, as well as a couple of more cards that will support the Overdress strategy. And honestly, I cannot wait, because we've seen a lot of awesome cards for all the other variants for the Genesis of the 5 Great decks, but we haven't really seen anything spectacular for Overdress. And it's one of my favorite decks, so I cannot wait what we're going to see for Nirvana and Verena. So with that said, let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of the new Phantom Blaster Dragon and Dragonic Overlord. They might not be as overly powerful as you would expect it, but honestly, I'm very happy that they're not overpowered. They are very flavorful. They look very awesome. Their strategy is there. They do have the inherent synergy and consistency, and we still have some extra cards left to upgrade their potential deck. So overall, I'm very happy that the power level there isn't going through the roof with set 2 and with these new Dragonic Overlord and Phantom Blaster Dragon. So personally, I'm happy with that fact. But I'm curious of what you guys think of these new cards. Are you happy with them, or are you disappointed with those particular cards? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I've been Mr. Time Leap, and I see you guys in the next one!